take a deep breath right now. As you watch this, there is a ghost inside you. It's in your bones, your blood, and the very synapses of your brain. It's a silent toxin, a relic of a century-old crime. You didn't choose it, but one man did. A man who was hailed as a visionary while he was systematically suffocating every living thing on this planet. Or paycheck. His name was Thomas Midgley Jr. History books rarely mention him, but his legacy is written in our DNA. He was a chemist with a smile, but he had caused more damage to the Earth's atmosphere than any other single organism in history. The year was 1921. Car engines had a problem. They knocked. It was bad for business. Midgley found the solution. Lead, tetrethyl lead. It was cheap. It was effective. But lead is a potent neurotoxin. It rots the brain and drives men into madness. The corporations knew this, so they made a pact of silence. They gave it a beautiful, innocent name to hide the poison. They called it Ethel. Almost immediately, the horror began. At the first ethyl plant, workers started disappearing. They hallucinated giant insects crawling on the walls. They screamed at shadows. The newspapers called it the House of Butterflies. Pressure was mounting. The public was scared. So, Midgley decided to perform a miracle, a stunt that would seal our fate forever. Welcome to classified history. This is the story of the man who broke the world. October 1924. To save his empire, Midgley stages a spectacle. Before a crowd of terrified reporters, he takes a small vial of pure tetrethyl lead. He pours it over his hands. He lifts a bottle to his nose and deep breathes the fumes for 60 full seconds. He is smiling, washing his hands in the very substance that was melting the brains of his workers. "I'm not taking any chances," he tells them. "I wouldn't do this every day, but it's as safe as any other chemical." The reporters are convinced. The headlines scream safety proven. But as the cameras stop flashing, the mask begins to slip. Midgley isn't just fine. He is dying. Behind the scenes, Midgley collapses. His lungs are burning. His nervous system is under attack. He secretly flees to Florida to recover, hiding in a private room while his company tells the world he simply caught a cold. For the next 2 years, he is too sick to even walk. But the damage is done. The lie worked. The government gives the green light. Lead is now in every car, on every street, and in every lung. But for Midgley, one global disaster wasn't enough. By the 1930s, he turned his attention to another problem: refrigeration. Back then, fridges used toxic gases that occasionally leaked and killed entire families in their sleep. They needed something safe, and Midgley found it. He called it Freon. The world celebrated, but they didn't look up at the sky. He didn't just poison the air we breathe. He had just invented a chemical that would travel miles above our heads, silently eating away the only shield protecting our planet from the sun. The ozone layer was dying, and the man responsible was being awarded the prestigious priestly medal. He was a hero. In a world that didn't know it, was being dismantled. By the mid-20s, this discovery had transformed into a goldmine. The giants of industry forged a silent pact, creating a force that governed the very atmosphere. They didn't just market a product, they sold a dream of speed, status, and the open road. But as cities filled with the sound of engines, a silent shadow began to fall. Something invisible was drifting through the air, settling on every surface. from the city squares to the quiet corners of every home. For decades, scientists who tried to warn the public were silenced, funding was cut, reputations were destroyed. The industry had a simple strategy: create doubt. They even hired experts to say that the amount of lead found in people's blood was completely normal. But before Midgley introduced leaded gasoline, there had never been such a thing as a normal level of lead in the human body. Then came one of the most concerning discoveries. Decades later, researchers noticed a striking pattern. In many cities where leaded gasoline was introduced, rates of violent crime tended to rise about 20 years later. Lead doesn't only affect the body, it can also impact the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain linked to impulse control and decision-making. Midgley hadn't just affected public health. His invention may have also influenced human behavior and society in ways no one expected. But time reveals what silence hides. Decades later, a chilling correlation emerged. In every corner of the map where the mist had spread, a wave of chaos followed a generation later. It was as if the very nature of humanity had been nudged toward a darker path. Without a word, the world had changed. A new kind of society had been shaped, not by laws, but by the molecules drifting in the wind. To prove its innocence, the creator performed one last public act. In front of a hall of scholars, he inhaled the substance deep into his chest and extinguished a flame with his breath. It was a masterpiece of theater. The medals followed, as did the fame. He was the golden boy of the industrial age, a man who had conquered both the road and the home. But while he stood on the stage, his silent creation was beginning a slow, invisible ascent. It was traveling to a place where no man had ever stood, toward the very roof of our world. High above the clouds, the miracle revealed its true face. It was indestructible, a persistent wanderer in the stratosphere. Under the harsh glare of the sun, it began to dismantle the thin, fragile glass shield that protected all life from the celestial fire. One tiny spark of this creation could shatter 100,000 molecules of the world's defense. Without realizing it, humanity had started a countdown. The armor of the planet was being stripped away, one cold breath at a time. As the decades turned, the architect himself began to fade. The man who had reshaped the chemistry of the Earth found himself betrayed by his own biology. At the height of his influence, a quiet, paralyzing force took hold of him. He who had moved the world was now unable to move his own limbs. He was confined to a room surrounded by the silence of his thoughts and the weight of his legacy. But even in the stillness, his mind remained a restless engine of invention. He could not accept a world where he was not the master of his surroundings. His final project was a personal one. He rigged a complex web of iron and rope above his resting place, a system of precision and balance, designed to grant him the freedom the disease had stolen. It was a mechanical marvel, a testament to his belief that any problem could be solved with enough engineering. For a time, it worked. He was lifted and lowered by his own genius, a puppet master controlling his own strings. But in the shadows of that room, the line between the inventor and the invention began to blur. The stage was set for the final, most ironic twist in a life defined by unintended consequences. November 1944, a cold autumn morning. The machine that was designed to provide freedom became a silent executioner. In a tragic twist of physics, the ropes Midgley had carefully calculated became a labyrinth of no escape. The inventor, who had spent his life engineering solutions for a global scale, failed to solve the most personal problem of all. He was found silent, caught in the very web he had spun. The man who had choked the atmosphere had, in the end, been choked by his own hand. It was an ending so ironic, it felt like a dark script written by destiny itself. With Midgley gone, the world moved on, blissfully unaware of the ticking clock he had left behind. For decades, the invisible dust continued to settle, and the shield in the sky continued to thin. It seemed the secret would be buried with its creator. But science has a way of haunting the present. 30 years later, a young geochemist named Claire Patterson was trying to measure the age of the Earth. To find the answer, he needed to measure lead. And that was when he realized that something was horribly wrong. The entire world was screaming with a signal that shouldn't be there. Patterson discovered that the air, the deep oceans, and even the ice in the most remote corners of the planet were saturated with the ghost of Midgley's genius. He realized he wasn't just measuring the Earth, he was measuring a crime scene. But when he spoke up, the giants of industry, the same ones who had stood behind Midgley, tried to crush him. They offered him money to look away, and when he refused, they tried to make him disappear from the halls of science. The battle for the truth had begun, a war between one man and the legacy of a titan. It took decades of fighting, but eventually, the shield began to heal. The world agreed to ban the chemicals that ate the sky. Slowly, the air began to clear of the heavy dust. But the molecules Midgley unleashed are still out there. They are in the glaciers of the Arctic and the depths of the Pacific. They are a permanent part of the geological record, a layer of history that future civilizations will look back on and wonder how could one? Man be allowed to play with the fire of the gods for so long and at such a price? We live in the world that Midgley built, a world of incredible comfort and hidden costs. Every time we turn a key or open a fridge, we touch his ghost. His story is a warning, etched in the atmosphere and written in our blood. Progress is a double-edged blade, and some secrets are only classified because we aren't ready to face the reflection in the glass. This is the end of this file, but the archives are vast. The shadows are deep, and the truth is always waiting. Enter Claire Patterson, a man who wasn't looking for a conspiracy. He was just a geochemist trying to answer one of humanity's oldest questions: how old is the Earth? To find out, he needed to measure lead in ancient rocks. But he encountered a nightmare. Every sample he touched was contaminated. The air in his lab, the water in his pipes, the very skin on his hands, everything was screaming with a signal that shouldn't exist. He realized he wasn't living in a natural world anymore. He was living inside a massive global experiment. Patterson took his fight to the only place they couldn't reach: the ancient ice of Greenland. He dug deep into the frozen layers of time, reading the atmosphere of the past like a book. And there it was, the undeniable proof. For thousands of years, lead was almost non-existent. Then, in 1923, the year of Midgley's miracle, the levels exploded. The ice didn't lie. The planet had a scar, and it was shaped exactly like a gallon of ethyl gasoline. The wall of silence was finally starting to crack. It is one of the most chilling correlations in modern history. The lead crime hypothesis everywhere that the toxin was removed from the fuel. The violence began to drop exactly 20 years later. It was as if a global fever was finally breaking. We didn't solve the crime wave just with more police. We solved it by finally stopping the man in the round glasses from poisoning the clouds. Midgley never saw the chaos he caused. But every locked door and every siren in the late 20th century was a silent tribute to his work. Before we seal this file, there is one more detail the archives possess. The man responsible for this contamination, Midgley, almost sealed our collective fate, yet he was hailed as a genius. The silence was absolute. but the truth found an unlikely champion. It took 30 years and a different kind of visionary Patterson to notice the anomalies, the signals that should not have been there, while one man, in his pursuit of efficiency, layered the past with a silent toxin. Another man spent his entire existence peeling those layers back. It was a silent war fought with precision and numbers against an invisible empire. He was erased from history, denied recognition and forbidden to speak, all for daring to show us what we were breathing. In the end, he won. The shield began to heal. The air began to settle. We are here today because that single, defiant voice refused to be silenced by the weight of a titanic secret. The archives are vast, the shadows are deep, and the truth is always waiting. I am the archivist, and this was Classified History. Subscribe to the archive before the next file is redacted. I will tell you many more stories. Until we meet again, my dear listener,